There is no option left, and that Russia is on course for a direct conflict between NATO and the USA. The commander has warned that there is a potential right now for a full-scale war. No things hidden. A full world war against Russia. In the face of what they call Russian aggression against Ukraine, the commander of the Czech Republic's armed forces has cautioned that a full-blown war between NATO and Russia, once deemed as a worst-case scenario. I'll remind you that in yesterday's video, we talked about how the Chinese president is saying you need to get ready for all of the worst-case scenarios. This conflict, once deemed a worst-case scenario, is now a flaring possibility. Speaking at a conference in the parliament, the general emphasized the imperative right now for NATO militaries to undertake all essential preparations for a direct fight against Russia. We view war between Russia and the North Atlantic Alliance as the worst-case scenario, but not impossible, the general reiterated. It is possible, he expresses, that Russia is currently on the trajectory that leads to a confrontation with the alliance. In the interview, the general clarified, "I do not want a war." He labeled the prospect of the war as the blackest scenario. He acknowledged that while no one desires war, and I'm going to say he's lying right there, because those men in the military industrial complex, a great deal of them, especially all of the MIC, they want war. They desire war. They feed on war and death and destruction. But there are a lot of people who don't. He acknowledged that while no one desires war, he says, it would be imprudent to dismiss it as coming. He stresses that there is a need for long-term preparedness. You hear these words, preparedness, get ready, worst-case scenarios, survival, over and over again. But why, when you are preparing, when you are getting ready, when you are working to survive, are you labeled some sort of doom and gloomer? Why are you labeled as some sort of, survivalist in a negative context? Why aren't they applauding that, oh, that's great. Instead of buying a brand new car, you decided to put a year's worth of food away for your family. Wow, smart job there, Joe. Why aren't they saying, that's great. Instead of, spending all day at the stadium, you went to learn advanced life-saving techniques. Well, great job for you. No, they look at you and they say, well, aren't you some sort of crazy doomsdayer? Wow, I don't want to think like that, Mr. Negative. No, this is reality. Do you think that surgeons who spent their entire life trying to heal the hearts of people through surgery are doom and gloomers? No, they know that people have clogged arteries and they will die without that help. What about EMTs and ambulance individuals, no matter what you call them in your country? Do you think that they're doom and gloomers because they went to school and they work in the trade of saving a life until you can get to a hospital? No. They are realists. What about real law enforcement, the people who are there to help? Do you think they're doom and gloomers? Absolutely not. So why is it that you are labeled as some sort of whack job for just trying to do what's right? He says, as simply as he can put it, war will happen. The general emphasized that NATO's deterrence capabilities are right now so crucial that they must convey to Russia a military victory against Western adversaries is not obtainable. They argue that Russia must right now understand that if Russia engages in a conflict, it will not be worth it because Russia cannot succeed. The Kremlin, Russia, has portrayed its invasion of Ukraine as a preemptive strike against NATO, they say. They have alleged that NATO's role in fueling Russophobia within Ukraine exists. However, they warn that, remember, these are their words. I'm just delivering to you the reality of what is driving us into World War III. They say Russia's interventions in Ukraine's domestic politics, the annexation of Crimea, the seizure of territories in the eastern Donbass have deepened the divide between, basically made it irreversible what's going to happen between Russia and the USA. Now, they're saying right now that there is no turning back, that there is absolutely no way to get around from this. They say that this is our reality now. China's telling their people to get ready. Russia told their people to get ready. Russia's building nuclear bunkers. Other countries around Europe are preparing their nuclear bunkers. China, we don't really know what they're doing because they're so locked tight on our ability to spy inside of that country that we only have glimpses of the amount that they prepare. But here in America and there in Canada, they're so worried about what's being sold at Target and who Bud Light's advertising to and what's going to happen between the next election and who's going to fight between the Republican Party. They're so worried about this, and that's the puke that they're throwing down your throat. That's all they want you to think about. While the rest of the world is preparing to survive a world war, they want you hyper-focused on nonsense. And instead, we need to break away from that, break out of their dislocation of reality, and we need to just get ready. And so what we're seeing right now is a change. We're seeing the people of Russia, we're seeing the people of China, people all over the world start to say, you know what? Times are getting really scary, and I'm going to do what I can to get ready. Now, during the State of the Nation address in February, Putin criticized all of America and the West. He asserted that Ukraine is a hostage now of America. He accused the West of attempting to transform the country into a global confrontation. And he said that Russia is determined to protect Russian interests. They believe that that is a part of Ukraine. Now, Pavel Luzin, a Russian political analyst and a visiting scholar at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, has said that dialogue with Russia is arduous. And he says that the proposition and engaging of this dialogue is a strategic mistake. They say that we must recognize the gravity of this situation, and the NATO Secretary General and numerous government leaders within the alliance have reiterated their commitment to making sure that NATO shows Russia will lose against a fight against the Western powers. NATO has faced criticism, of course, for protracted decision-making. Now, we see the end game. We know what happens next. What happens next is bad. And so every step you can do, like I said on yesterday's video, every step you can take is a step in the right direction. If you can only shop at the dollar store, the $1.25 store, because don't forget, our government is lying to us, saying inflation's at 4 to 6%, when inflation's obviously at a minimum of 25%. If you can only shop at the $1.25 store, if you can only go to Walmart, get that cheap garbage while you can. You will never in your life, in your children's life, see a $10 toaster available to you again. And so instead of moving past these opportunities, we need to seize them, take advantage of them, buy the extra shoes now. If you've got kids, there's a very easy understanding that your kids' feet are going to grow. Buy their shoes now. Buy ahead. Put it away. Put it in the closet. It doesn't really matter where it is. Just get ready. Everybody else is, but they don't want us to. Now, we're seeing posters on social media calling for freedom fighters from within Russia to join the so-called Legion, Freedom of Russia, as the group backed by the United States of America and by NATO, according to analysts, works right now to recruit thousands of Russians to attack Moscow. Now, from the information that we're seeing, the Freedom of Russia fighters are entering through certain neutral border states. We have a steady stream of recruits, they say. Our recruits are growing. More and more Russians, according to the Legion commander, understand that this war is criminal, and this war must be stopped. If you don't think that they are deleting your future, I want you to listen to these figures. In the year 1980, 84%, 8 out of 10 people were living on their own. 63% were married. Almost 40% had a child. Fast forward to the year 2021. 68% of 25-year-olds were living outside their parents' home. 22% were married, 17% had a child. U.S. bombers are reported right now to be continuing what they're calling a freedom of operation and defense flight over and near Bosnia. They say that this is in continued support through threats by the pro-Russian Bosnian groups. According to the reports on previous fly-throughs, though the current operations have not been declassified, a pair of U.S. Air Force B-1B Lancer bombers flew over several Bosnian cities in a show of force. Imagine looking up, knowing that you're at the tinderbox of war, and you look up and you see American bombers overhead. Fully armed military, ready to drop bombs on your city. What do? Do you evacuate then? Do you bug out at that moment in time? It won't be long before you as an individual are going to be faced with a situation that causes you to make that question for yourself. Do I bug out? Do I stay home? Do I evacuate? Do I shelter in place? Do I whatever? So instead, what you need to do right now is start to think, where will I go? What will trigger me to back out or to bug out? What would cause me to evacuate? And you need to get ready for those plans. You need to have a physical map, not your phone. You need to have an understanding of water locations. You need to be ready with an idea of where to go. And what if that way is dangerous? Where else do you go? Do you have the things that you can throw in your bag to stay out in the middle of some wooded area overnight while you make a decision, a plan with your family? Are your children so used to camping, or your family so used to camping, or you for that matter? Are you so used to camping that a night out in the woods is no different, so you're not bogged down with the stress of the other things that are happening? You will be faced with that very soon. And so get ready while you can. China is expected to continue pushing the envelope of military actions that could ignite a hot war with the United States of America before they take action against Taiwan. This is evident after the Pentagon released a statement earlier this week acknowledging that a People's Republic of China J-16 fighter performed what the USA is calling an unnecessarily aggressive maneuver during the interception of a U.S. Air Force RC-135 aircraft. The PRC pilot flew directly in front of the nose, and they showed video, so you can go look this up, forcing the U.S. aircraft to fly through its wake and turbulence. The 135 was conducting what the USA calls safe and routine operations over the South China Sea in what the USA considers to be accordance with international law. In rebellion to China, America's military has said the U.S. will continue to fly, sail, and operate responsibly wherever international law allows. They continue that the U.S. Indo-Pacific Joint Force will continue to fly in international airspace with due regard and safety of all vessels and aircraft under international law. We expect, the U.S. says, all countries in the Indo-Pacific to use international airspace safely and in accordance with international law. Experts say that China is going to continue to push this envelope of what is internationally acceptable. They say China's end game here is to cause the USA, basically entrap the U.S. military into acting in an overt response that would, conventionally test China's military. They warn that we can expect China to continue to do what would be considered by the Western world performing provocative actions against U.S. interests that could, at one point in time, according to one analyst, lead a member of the U.S. military or the U.S. government to act in a way that could be condemned by China, leaving China in the right for a fight that they hoped to start in the first place. Now, I don't know what generation you grew up in school, but these little punks, when I was growing up, would always be, they would always try to push, and they learned it because I guess their parents were complete a-holes also. And so these punks would sit up there and they would front in your face and they would be aggressive and they would try to get you to act, because here's what happens. Say you're fighting with another individual or arguing and you see that escalation of conflict. Your fist is balled, you're ready, you maybe have a self-defense tool in your hand. And if they front and they come at you and you act and you touch them, but they didn't touch you, according to U.S. law, who really performed the criminal act? Well, they're going to take you to jail. They're going to charge you with violence. They're not going to charge the person who you perceived was acting against you violently. And so they say that's what China's trying to do right now. China is fronting against the USA. China's pushing that envelope. China's acting in a way that the US might perceive a threat. And in that perception, the USA might fire a shot, might down a Chinese plane. You see, the Chinese military doesn't care that they'll lose one plane, one pilot, some weapons and tools. No, they don't care. If the USA acts and takes down a Chinese plane, that gives China the right. And that's what China wants. So be prepared, guys, because as soon as this happens, the South China Sea is a no-go zone. We're going to have massive problems. Keep watching and keep prepared. From my family to yours, please stay safe, remain vigilant, and keep watch. Don't forget to join us here tomorrow. Full Spectrum Survival.